Hey friends, we're all back together again for a little lecture about 19th century lighting innovations. I've broken this, what would usually be in class one full day, maybe a little spillover. I've broken it into 4 mini lectures, which you can listen to and take short quizzes on in about the same amount of time as we would spend in class on this. So let's get rolling. First of all, I want to ask you, how were we lighting the stage in the 19th century? Mostly, how were we lighting it? In the 18th and 19th century, we're inside, right? We're doing theater indoors, mostly in this time period. How are we lighting the stage? Right, we're lighting it with candles. And here you can see a print depicting something that would have been a very common sight for people in the 18th and 19th century, and that's a lamplighter. That's somebody who comes out before the show starts, comes out in between acts, will come out at intermissions, etc., to relight the lights because they are candles. What do you see in this picture? You see little candles at the footlight positions, all there across the front of the stage. On the bottom left-hand corner of this picture, you see the outline of the prompter's box where somebody would be standing on book to feed lines to actors. Then you see in front of the stage the orchestra and the orchestra pit, and then beyond that you see ladies and gentlemen in the audience. I'm not so sure there'd be a lady in the front row in this time period, but the artist has taken some liberties. Anyway, we see somebody coming out to light the lights. This was what we used for illumination, right? We'd have footlights, and then you'd have candelabras, chandeliers, I should say, all over the house and on the stage. You can't just light the stage with candles or there won't be enough illumination. So they have to have light on the house and on the stage, more chandeliers over the stage. But this is to get enough light. Now, what is the quality of that light like? Of candlelight. Those of you who study lighting design in particular, what is the quality of that light? Yeah, it's warm. It's very becoming. That's why we have romantic light dinners by candlelight. It's attractive on most skin tones. And so people looked good in candlelight. Keep that in mind as we think about these changes. What are the downsides of candlelight? Right, somebody's got to come out and relight it. What else? Yeah, fire. You're right. Fire is a real downside. Open flames are a real downside. It's going to take us a while, as you'll see in this series of mini lectures, to get away from open flame. We're not going to jump right to getting away from open flame. But we're going to move closer and closer to something that does not rely on open flame, because open flame is dangerous. Most of the history of 18th and 19th century theater is the history of fires. There are some bad fires. We should do another lecture someday just about fires, but I don't have one planned for you right now. If you're interested, a little bit sort of have a dark sense of interest in history, look up the Iroquois Theater Fire of 1903 in Chicago. It's the worst theater fire in the history of the United States. Happened during a matinee with mostly women and children in the audience. Theater fires are a real thing, are a real fear. That's why there's that old phrase, don't yell fire in a crowded theater. People would panic if they thought there was a fire because they had to get out before they were trapped, right? All that to say, fire bad, we need something better. It's going to take us a little while to get there. The first thing that we do to improve upon candles, however, is still going to rely on flame. That's gaslight. Gaslight was used, these are examples, an example of a gas fixture you can see there, that big picture. The other picture on the right-hand side of your slide, if in the little circled area, do you see that there's a gas fixture backstage? So that's to point out that gas fixtures could be used to illuminate the stage and to illuminate backstage areas. Gaslight had advantages over candlelight. They have greater control over intensity and direction than a candle. You can make gaslight instruments have a greater lumen power, and you can direct that light with more accuracy than you can with a candle. So this was very helpful to creating more illumination on the stage. It's going to be helpful in us figuring out how to dim the house lights. More on that in just a couple minutes. And it's going to encourage more realistic lighting effects, which is something that will go hand in hand with the movement of realism, which will also be rising during this same period of time, right? Quickly, I just wanted to tell you how some of this innovates. You may want to pause here after I talk so you can write these down. It's up to you. But the first theater to light the stage entirely with gaslight is the Chestnut Street Theater in Philadelphia in 1816. Whoa, go America. The next theater to do it, theaters to do it, are both in London, Covent Garden and Drury Lane, two theaters we know quite well from theater history. They adopt gaslight in 1817, and it moves over to Paris shortly after. The Opéra starts to do it in 1822, and the Comédie Française in 1843. I'll point out that some of these theaters were using gaslight out front for street illumination or in their lobbies even before they started to put it on the stage. But by the time we get to the middle of the 19th century, it's really common to have gaslight on the stage. And as I said, you could control it, which was really helpful in creating the kinds of spectacle that was popular in this time period, right? We've been talking about that. Well, gaslight helps it to happen. How did you control that gaslight? Oh, wait, let me tell you this first. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. I wanted to tell you that there were not gas mains in the cities for much of that period of those theaters adopting gaslight. So each theater had its own gas plant. That meant that a lot of money had to be put out to adopting this technology. So going over to gaslight in the first half of the 19th century was an expensive thing, which is why we don't see a lot of theaters doing it until cities in Western Europe, the UK, and the US start to have more wider distribution systems for gas for the cities. Even then, gas for a theater is kind of expensive, but to get the spectacle, theaters put out the money. It was smelly. It was not without odor, that gas. It created heat in the theater, which also candles created heat, and there was danger. There's still an open flame. That's dangerous. Things could catch on fire. So our fire risk does not noticeably go down with gaslight over candlelight. And they can explode. You got a gas plant next to your theater, you risk explosion, but you get good spectacle. So, you take your lumps. How did you control it? You controlled gaslight with something called a gas table. A gas table is like the great-great-great-grandmother of a light board. This pictured here is not really a gas table. It's just a light board. It's an old school light board, but I couldn't find a picture of a gas table, so here you go. Gas table is like a light board. What it allowed a operator to do, an operator is called a gas man. What it allowed an operator to do is to control the flow of gas to multiple instruments from one central location. What do we get once we start to be able to do that? Yeah, we start to get the baby steps of lighting design, right? Somebody who can control the lights from a central location can plan them. That's the beginning of lighting design. And one thing that also feeds into this sense that we have the very beginnings of lighting design with gaslight is that gaslight could be colored. Now, they didn't color it with gels, as I'm showing here, but you can use your imagination. They colored it with transparent lacquered glass. It would burn off with the heat, so they'd have to re-dip the instruments, and there was a lot of experimentation with doing that better. One of the great experimenters with how to maximize the spectacle of light using gas instruments was the great English actor Henry Irving. He was a great actor. He's in your book. He's an actor manager, and he was really interested in what you could achieve with light. He introduced new things in the theater in the middle 19th century. Things like black masking to prevent lighting spill. He was the first person to do that in the English stage. He also was the first English actor manager to consistently dim the house lights during a performance, which is a real game changer. Changes how audiences relate to what they're seeing on stage. They get quieter, they riot less and yell less, they listen and look more attentively. Um, Henry Irving was so into experimenting with gas that he had a massive staff of gasmen or lighting operators, and maybe potentially we'd call them, some of them designers, at his famous Lyceum Theatre in London. So Gaslight is a game changer, does not reduce our risk of fire so much, but it increases our ability to control and even design light and to use light for that very popular element of spectacle in the 19th century. More on light in your next mini lecture. I'll meet you there.